Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our special celebratory video.
Right.
What are we celebrating?
Celebrating our Love Fest. It's the 45th anniversary of our first date. So we're going to give you the short synopsis and hopefully you will tune in for the rest of that. So the skinny is that Banshee and I met in June of 1976. Where did we meet at?
Well, do I say the location? We met at a library we worked at.
Yes, a public library. We were in our college era.
Yes, I was just a student assistant back in the day.
And so was I.
And part-time. But back in those days, they worked what they considered part-time, like almost full-time hours anyway.
Well, you could get it if you wanted. A lot of people just worked a standard student shift. But we were students, and we were working at a large public library that was near a university setting, so it was very busy. And
in the city of Detroit.
Our time together was sort of interesting because we worked in different departments, but we were supportive departments. My department supported her department.
And we gave you work.
Right.
We gave you drudge work to do.
Basically, her department called up for reference materials or stack materials, and my department brought it up.
So basically, I would see this guy wandering around and taking journals back down when I was on desk. And finally, some point, I, of course, had to call down there, and he would bring things up to the desk.
I don't even remember the first time I said hi to you or anything.
And he was very polite. Well, what I do remember is that I would keep spying at him. We had these cabinets near the elevator he would come off of. And there were these tall cabinets that held microfilms of newspapers. And he would just be behind there grabbing things off a shelf to go back downstairs. And I'm just wondering, who is this guy with the long hair over there?
Exactly. We were a world of differences because I was a long hair. How long was it? At least shoulder length, right?
Probably at least shoulder length, yeah.
It got longer than that.
Yeah, it did. And I don't think...
And you were very short-haired.
I went in phases. That was my short-haired period.
Well, why? Because although I was clearly identifiable as a hippie, you were identifiable as...
What?
An athletic jock.
Well, yes.
You were an athletic type, which was a world I was totally not into.
True.
So we were totally different worlds. And what was even weirder about all of this, do you remember?
We share what?
We went to the same high school, but we didn't know each other at all.
Of course. Right. We were, grades apart. And so we just never knew each other. Big school and all. So, I hung out with a different crowd. Definitely hung out with the jock crowd then because I was on the varsity field hockey team and played some other sports there at the high school. But we had one thing in common that we found out later, and that will come up actually in our next video during our wedding celebration, because not only is this the 45th anniversary of our first date, it is the 40th anniversary of our wedding.
Right, that's next month actually. So all of this is a tale unfolding. If you're interested in more about how we met and how we had our first date, check it out. It'll be on our YouTube. Okay, so to be totally fair, there was a reason why we didn't meet in our high school because number one, it was a large high school. The graduating classes, in my case, were 575, nearly 600, and we were actually 2 years apart. So later on, we found out that we did know a kid like from my neighborhood that knew her from her neighborhood, that kind of thing. But anyways, going on from there, we did work in that library, and eventually, after kind of moseying around a little bit, we finally decided one way or the other that somebody was going to ask somebody to go on a date.
That wouldn't have been me.
No, it probably wouldn't have been. So the thing was, I asked you for the date, and I had no idea what kind of date it would be. You know, other dates are like, let's go to a movie or something like that. And of course, we're both broke kids, really. So, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I don't even remember whose idea it was, but we eventually decided that our date was going to be at.
Well, you tell him. You pick the place. I didn't
Okay.
decide anything. He invited me out to the symphony
Right.
orchestra.
Detroit had a wonderful symphony that played at the former, well, it's no longer there, Ford Auditorium. It's, several thousand, 2 or 3 thousand people
He
capacity.
thought he would impress me with a nice musical performance, and especially orchestra, so howdy towdy,
Well,
And so, unlike the long haired person I saw before him, I
even,
would have expected him to invite me to a heavy duty rock concert.
I don't know if that's really true, but even though I was kind of into rock and roll, hard rock, I also at that time was trying to appreciate how to become more musical myself. I was learning how to play music poorly, and and so
Yes.
I wanted to explore things like classical because the structure of my music did sort of want to emulate classical to some degree. So this seemed to be a good idea, but there was one big hitch in my overall plan.
What was that?
I didn't have a car.
Oh, yes. So we had a chaperone on our first date.
Well, Detroit public transit at that time was not really anything great to talk
No.
about.
I used it all the time because at that point, believe it or not, I was not driving.
Well,
Long story there.
right, but you might not have even have been able to own a car. I didn't own a car at that point, and I knew how to drive. Let's take a look at the
Yeah.
detail here. You were still living at home with
Mhm.
your parent
Correct.
in the northeast part of Detroit.
Correct.
The symphony was downtown on the river,
Hmm.
and I lived at the Wayne State campus in one of the apartments that I lived in, which was a little bit midtown right by the university area. So for us to take public transportation would have been a fairly big feat.
So, needless to say, we had a threesome. I mean, just a date. Date. That, that day.
There
As
was
a
a
friend of
third
his,
person out.
as a friend of his came with us and with his car, another musician-y type person with long hair, I might add. And so they picked me up and we went to the symphony.
Well, here's the thing. This person was our friend Jeff. He became both of our friends. And of course, he was quite a musician. He was a very nearly brilliant classical piano player.
Details,
Well, this
details.
may have been the reason why we went to the symphony. I don't really remember
Oh,
for sure, but it may have been because of trying to either have his interest level in being the third person out,
I
or the fact
see.
that,
So you weren't
um,
trying to impress me. You were trying to get your driver to come along.
these details are vague for 45 years. But anyways, Jeff was a great
Things you
friend at
find
that
out
time.
later.
It could very well be. We're still looking into it.
So, at any
So we went
rate,
to the symphony.
we went to the symphony, and unbeknownst to Mr. O here, uh, I've had this problem since childhood. I used to go to these Catholic concerts, music concerts of all the grades, playing. And of course, it was orchestral music, so there were lots of violins. Violins put me to sleep. They just put me to sleep. I nod. And so I spent like 3/4 of the concert yawning a lot,
She drooled on my
trying
shoulder.
to cover up my
She
yawns
slobbered on my shoulder. No,
and
she
keep
didn't.
my eyes open. And it was nothing to do with the date per se, but it was definitely the choice of the style of music.
You know what? I've never asked you this
Yes.
question after all these years. I was 20, not quite 21, and you were
Right.
19, not quite 20,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Uh, was this like the first really serious attempt at having a date?
No,
Okay, because it wasn't for me either.
no.
That was
I
going to see
actually,
The Omen.
I actually had a couple of dates before him, and one of them was horseback riding. So that was kind of nice. I was taking horseback riding.
I don't remember you ever telling me you rode a
Of
horse.
course, I did. And when I remind you of it, you'll remember. At any rate, not going into it now. So, because it's not the story. So, I'm exhausted coming out of there, and we decided to go for Chinese food.
It was always the plan. I was gonna take her to a Chinese food place, and not just any Chinese food place.
We'll get into that background, but the thing about that is I was a little bit pensive because I'd never had Chinese food before. And I was a notoriously picky eater. And I didn't want to, discourage my date yet till he found out more about me, just how quirky I was. So I decided, what can I eat at
Someone's
this
quirky
restaurant
is
that I
someone's
would
picky.
like? And so I ended up, admitting to them that I really had no experience with Chinese food. I did do that part. I didn't tell them I was picky, but I said, so what would you recommend for somebody like me? And I can't remember if it was Jeff or you recommending the pepper steak for me, but that's what I had.
It would have been me because Jeff would have most likely been vegetarian.
Yeah.
And remember, I think did Jeff actually go or did he drop us off there? I guess
Oh,
he must
he was
have went.
there. Yeah.
Because, right, he would have had to have driven you back home. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Silly me.
So about the restaurant, Mr. O, I know you're dying to tell the story.
Well, at that time, and this was, as we said, October 1976, Detroit had a rather popular but controversial mayor. He was the city's first African-American black mayor, Coleman Young. And Coleman Young, if he put his brand on something, everybody liked it. So the particular Chinese restaurant we went to was known in the media as Coleman Young's favorite Chinese restaurant. And we're probably not going to mention the name.
No, of course you should not.
But
they're gone though. But.
So they're long gone. They've been gone for decades. Just like the memories of whatever we had Chinese food. I probably had sweet and sour or Chinese.
I was very impressed with the decor in the restaurant. I liked it. It was very nice.
Semi-Hollywood style Chinese restaurant, large pillars with, Buddha or whoever on them and stuff.
It just escapes me now. But, I mean, even the design of the restaurant was nice, the building itself. So, kind of looked pagoda-like a little bit.
The only reason why the story is really memorable, other than it was our first date, was that approximately 2 or so years later, a story in the media suggested that this particular restaurant had a visit by the county public health, and what they found in the kitchen was not very nice, and so they were actually shut down. And
we needn't go into detail.
We're not going to go into details, but they were shut down for a number of years. Eventually, they were allowed to reopen, though I believe it was a different location, a different restaurant. So anyways, that was our date pretty much. I don't remember that we had a drink. Did we have a drink?
Oh, of course I did.
Because at that age, you could drink at 18.
And that started my love affair with Mai Tais. I used to love to order Mai Tais at the Chinese restaurants.
Right, and we went to a number of them after that. That was kind of like maybe a constant in our overall dating pattern as we met other couples we dated with or married and had children along the same side. We often went to various Detroit area Chinese food restaurants, and I remember one that had the drink, the Navy Grog, and there was that one friend of ours who immediately said, I gotta try that, and of course ended up loving it every time we went there. But Chinese food and our dating was very special.
Well, we just didn't know where it would lead, and look, 45 years later.
Yes, you're like my special little fortune cookie.
Ah,
But the date ended more or less as you would suspect. Jeff and I took her back to her home, and of course, I met her mother, and that's a whole video for itself.
oh gosh. Don't know if we'll ever go there, Mr. O, but look at what I've got.
What do you got, Banshee?
I have, similar to what I've been showing on Twitter and Facebook, I have the Love Oracles. Hey, I've got it. The Love Oracles, which, similar to the music oracles, the art oracles I've been doing, this talks about romances and romantic characters throughout history. And I thought it would be fun, Mr. O, if we each pulled one that might signify our experience in our relationship.
But what would be more fun if you read the card I pull and I read the card you pull?
Well, for me, or is it the one for me, though, or is that the one for you I'm reading?
When you pull the card, I will read it, and when
Okay.
I pull the card, you will read it.
Got it. So this is for you.
All right.
So what am I doing now?
I guess I'm going to pull the card, and you're going to read it.
Okay.
Do I shuffle too?
Yeah, because this is for you.
Right, we should just each do a separate shuffle and read.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
We're used to this, as you can tell. So
you wanted me to do... I got it. But you're going to pull... I'm going to have you pull the card? No, I'm going to...
Well, no, you can just pull the card, and I'll read it. Are you reading for me? We really screwed that up, didn't we?
It's because you keep
go.
crossing the streams.
So I have to read it.
Yeah.
Well, you pulled Joan of Arc. Oh my goodness, that is so awesome. Will only settle for eternity. Love and faith will defeat violence. This is so true. This woman is one of the most non-violent persons, anti-violence, that I've ever known. Be not afraid of fire and arrows for anything that may come, or anything that may come. And Joan of Arc always represents a person who was willing to put it all on their faith, to not back down in the face of authority or injustice. And Banshee, that was actually one of the first things I learned from you many years ago. You always said, never settle for injustice.
Ooh. Well, it's interesting. Joan of Arc, of course, was a military leader and martyr. She believed it was her destiny to help the then uncrowned Charles VI secure the throne of France, and went to his court, hair cropped like a man and in military clothes, to convince him of her visions. With the Maid of Orleans at the head of his army, he was victorious in Battle of Orleans and crowned in 1492. In 1430, Joan was captured, but Charles VII refused to pay the ransom. She was charged with 70 counts of heresy and burned at the stake before a crowd of 10,000. An inquisitorial court later found her innocent of all charges. And in 1920, Joan was canonized a Catholic saint. So what is she doing in the love oracles? I get it's because of her love and faith, which will defeat violence. And, I've always felt that, this was a match made for eternity.
Aww. So now it's my turn.
Okay. Funny that Joan, because I do tend to wear the pants in the family sometimes.
So what do I wear, a skirt?
You do the love side, the squishy love readings, and I do the material.
There was a time I wanted to wear a skirt, but we're not going to talk about that.
All right. Do you resemble Emily Bronte?
Oh, dear. Does that mean I get the vapors?
Well, it says here, if you ever looked at me once with what I know is in you, I would be your slave. Hearts can be broken, but souls should be shared. Love is like the wild rose briar, friendship like the holly tree, but which will bloom most constantly? Wow. So how does this fit you? Well, souls should be shared. You are so deep, Mr. O.
It sounds
Deep-
like Stockholm Syndrome. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't.
Deep with relationships, deep with passion, deep with emotion,
Aw.
deep with No.
My goodness.
Deep
So
with
s-
BS. No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
So thank you very much for that.
Well, I'm not done. I'm sure
Oh,
there's
okay.
something quippy in here from Emily Bronte, and these are in no order, which is why I'm fumbling looking for where they put Emily Bronte. There she is, near Jane Austen. Okay. Emily Bronte trained as a teacher and taught at Law Hill School in Halifax for a year. Shy and unsociable, her first and only novel, Wuthering Heights, was published in 1847 under her pen name Alice Bell. And you like that story, Wuthering Heights. You like the movie, I know.
We'll get to that.
At any rate, though often considered a passionate love story is in the popular imagination, Wuthering Heights depicts a hellish version of love, full of emotional and psychic cruelty and pain. The moody, brooding, aloof Heathcliff is sometimes seen as archetypal tortured lover, but unlike other misunderstood heroes, Mr. Darcy comes to mind, Heathcliff's passion and goodness remains unrealized.
All right.
Comment?
No, I'd rather not, please.
Not about the Wuthering Heights, okay? So basically, it's really you. It says passionate love story too. So I feel that Mr. O, being the Scorpio that he is full of passion.
Why, thank you for noticing.
After this long?
So that's it for our anniversary.
Yes. So
Memory.
definitely join us on our live streams for more fun. And don't forget, there'll be a video for our 45th wedding anniversary as well. Do you think we could be serious about anything here? We'll see you guys. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.